The Wolf and the 7 Little Goats. Once upon a time, a goat who had 7 young children had to go into the forest to fetch some food. So she called the little goats and said, "Dear children, I am going to the forest. Beware of the wolf. If it comes here, it will eat you. It may try to cheat you, but you will recognize it by its terrible voice and black paws." The little goats replied, "Don't worry, Mother. We will take care." After their mother left, there was a knock at the door. The Little Match Girl. It was New Year's Eve, in the cold and dark night. A poor little girl was walking through the streets. The little girl lost the slippers she was wearing. One slipper fell off somewhere. And a little boy ran away with the other. No one had bought any of the matches she carried with her in her worn-out apron. Yes. Not a penny she had earned all day. She was hungry and cold. In all the windows, lights were shining. And there was a glorious smell of roast goose out there in the street. It was New Year's Eve. Her father would be very angry with her. She was scared of him. But what could she do? She sat down at a street corner and pulled out a match. A little match might do her good and warm her fingers. She drew out one. Match! She scratched it against the wall of the house she sat, trying to keep away from the cold. The fire came to light. It was a warm, bright flame, like a little candle. When she held her hands over it, it was a wonderful little light. It really seemed to the little girl as if she sat before a stove. The fire warmed her so well. When out went the flame, the stove was gone. She sat with the burned match in her hand. She struck another. It burned. It gave a light. And where it shone on the wall, she could see through it into the room where a table stood. And the roast goose smoked gloriously, stuffed with apples and dried plums. It seemed to her that the goose hopped off the table and onto a plate just for her to eat. Then, as before, the match went out. And she felt the cold night again. she lighted another match. Now she was sitting under a beautiful Christmas tree. Thousands of candles burned upon its green branches. But once again, just as she felt the picture getting real, the match went out. The Christmas lights went higher and higher. She saw that now they were stars in the sky. One of them fell and made a long line of fire. "Oh, now someone is dying," said the little girl. For her old grandmother had said, "When a star falls, a soul goes to heaven to meet God." She rubbed another match against the wall. It became bright again, and in the light there stood her grandmother. "Grandmother!" cried the child. "Oh, take me with you. I know you will go when the match is burned out. You will go away like the warm stove, the nice roast goose, and the Christmas tree." And she rubbed the whole bundle of matches. And the matches burned with such a glow that it became brighter than the day. Her grandmother, with a smile, took the little girl up in her arms, and both flew in the light so high up, where there was no cold nor hunger, for they reached heaven and they were with God. But down below on the ground, against the wall of the house, sat the little girl, with red cheeks frozen to death. On the last evening of the old year, people passing by stopped. "Ah, how sad," they said. Little did they know of what warmth and love the little girl had felt in her grandmother's arms, and how happy she was now. The Little Mermaid. The Sea King lived under the sea. His palace was made of shells and sparkling stones. His mother and 6 daughters also lived with him. All his daughters were beautiful, but his youngest daughter was the most beautiful. She was not like the others. Her sisters liked to play. But she liked to listen to stories. Indeed, her grandmother said, "You will be able to see the world when you are 15 years old." When she was 15 years old, her grandmother decorated her hair. Then she ordered 8 oysters to attach themselves to her tail. They started swimming up to the surface of the sea. As they reached the surface, the little mermaid saw a large ship in which sailors were singing and dancing. In the evening, there was a celebration on the ship because of the 16th birthday of the prince. The little mermaid was fascinated by the prince. But alas, a terrible storm blew over the sea that night. The little mermaid saw the ship sinking. All the sailors drowned. She quickly dived into the sea and saved the prince. The prince was unconscious. In the morning, the mermaid carried the prince to the shore. She laid him down on the sand. She went back to the sea as she did not want anybody to see her. Soon a pretty girl walking by saw the prince lying on the shore. With the help of some fishermen, she carried him to a house nearby. Meanwhile, the little mermaid kept on thinking about the prince. She tried to look for him, but did not succeed. When she told her sisters about him, her sisters found out his palace. Now, she always waited near his palace just to see him. Her grandmother told her, "We live longer than humans, but their souls live forever." Now, the little mermaid wanted to have a human soul. For this, she went to the sea witch who knew magic. The witch said, "I will give you 2 human legs in exchange for your tail. But you have to give me your voice. If the prince loves another, you will change into white sea foam." The little mermaid nodded her head to say yes. Then the witch gave her a magic potion to drink. When she drank the bitter potion, she became unconscious. When she gained consciousness, she found herself in the arms of her prince. Now she had 2 legs instead of a tail. The prince took her back to his palace. There she enjoyed herself and danced away the whole day. But she could neither speak nor sing. She and the prince were happy. One day, the king ordered the prince to marry the daughter of a neighboring king. When the prince saw the princess, he found her to be the same girl who had found him on the beach. The prince fell in love with her and then and there decided to marry her. This saddened the little mermaid. She knew that her time of death was near, and she tried to spend as much time as she could with her prince. But alas, she could not tell him of her love for him, as she could not speak. At the same time, her sisters came to know about this. They brought her a magic knife from the witch. They said, little sister, now you will have to kill the prince in his sleep. Only after that can you come back to the sea as a mermaid. The little mermaid quietly came to the prince's room at night. He was sleeping. She kissed him, but could not stab him with the knife as she truly loved him. So, after giving him one last look, she threw herself into the sea. She found herself in the sea with her sisters. Now, she lives happily with them. Red Riding Hood. A little girl named Red Riding Hood lived with her mother in a cottage at the edge of a forest. Her father was a woodcutter. She always wore a red hooded coat that her grandma made for her. That is why she was called Red Riding Hood. Her grandmother lived alone in a rose-covered cottage at the other edge of the forest. Red Riding Hood loved her grandmother very much and liked to visit her as often as possible. One day her mother said to her, "Why don't you go to your grandmother's house for tea today? She has not been well. I have baked a cake and prepared some fruit juice for her." She put the food in a basket and gave it to Red Riding Hood. She told her not to stray away from the path which led to her grandmother's cottage. She also instructed her not to stop to talk to anyone on the way, especially strangers. Red Riding Hood nodded her head and promised her mother that she would go straight to her grandmother's cottage. Then her mother waved goodbye to her. The little girl merrily went on her way. After some time, she met a wolf. The wolf was wicked and mean and very hungry. The wolf sweetly asked her where she was going. Little Red Riding Hood replied that she was going to visit her grandmother. She also told the wolf about the food she was taking to her. The wolf asked her where her grandmother lived. Little Red Riding Hood told the wolf where the cottage was and even told him how to reach it. The wicked wolf then told the little girl to collect flowers for her grandmother. Red Riding Hood began to collect flowers and the wolf went away. The wolf went towards Red Riding Hood's grandmother's cottage. He said to himself, "Aha! I will eat the old grandmother now and Little Red Riding Hood at lunch." Reaching the cottage, the wolf knocked at the door. The grandmother was an old lady. She could not come to the door. She told the wolf to lift the door latch and come in. Thus, the wolf entered the cottage. Quickly, he jumped on the old lady and ate her up. Gulp! Now, the wolf shut the door, wore the grandmother's clothes, and lay down on her bed. It hid itself under the bed sheet and waited for Red Riding Hood. After a while, Red Riding Hood knocked at the door. In a voice which sounded just like the grandmother, the wolf told her to lift the latch and come in. She did. Little Red Riding Hood said, "My mother has sent some cake and fruit juice for you, but your voice seems strange. Why are you in bed?" The wolf said, "I am not feeling very well. Come, child, and sit on the bed." Red Riding Hood came near and was surprised to see the way her grandmother looked. She said, "Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have!" The wolf replied, "It is so that I can see you better." Red Riding Hood then said, What big ears you have!" The wolf replied, "It is so that I can hear you better." Red Riding Hood said, What big teeth you have!" The wolf replied, "It is so that I can eat you up." The wolf jumped out of the bed and rushed towards Red Riding Hood to eat her. Oh my God! Little Red Riding Hood ran screaming to the door of the cottage. As soon as the wolf got her red dress, the cottage door opened and her father came rushing in. He killed the wolf with his axe. Then he held Red Riding Hood in his arms. She told him, "Oh, father, I think the wolf has eaten up dear grandmother." Her father quickly cut the wolf open with a knife and found the old lady inside the wolf's body. As the wolf was greedy, he had just swallowed the grandmother. He had not chewed her. Because of this, she was safe and sound inside the wolf's body. The three of them sat down to enjoy the food that Little Red Riding Hood's mother had packed. Now Red Riding Hood promised them, "I will never talk to any stranger again. I will always obey my mother and never stray away from the path."